Hello everyone, this is the design we're going to be painting on this video today. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Fruit is one of my favorite things to paint, so let's get started. Okay, so to begin this surface, first of all, this one I painted on a plaque, a palette plaque from CD Wood. It is a 12-inch palette plaque, so I will have the reference to that in my packet for this particular surface. But for this lesson, I'm going to paint it on a 12-inch plate that I bought at Hobby Lobby. It's the same size, so the pattern will fit it just perfectly. So if you don't have the plaque handy, you can run to Hobby Lobby and get this particular plate. Now I've already applied one coat of multi-purpose sealer on the front and the back with a dampened artist sponge, and on the back I base coated it white, and then I varnished it so that the back is completely done. I don't have to worry about it. If I accidentally get some paint on it, I can just wipe it off with a baby wipe. So the front is ready to go for us. I am going to use my dampened artist sponge to apply a coat of maybe 2 with this wood. Depends on how well it goes on. This is dried clay. It is a new color. When you put your multi-purpose sealer on, you want to lightly sand it when you're done. It's always a good idea to lightly sand your wood before you apply the multi-purpose sealer, and then sand it again after it dries, because it will raise the grain a little bit, and you don't want any roughness, especially through here. It will be particularly rough in this groove, and then on the outer edge. So those places you want to sand really well. And just a quick one coat on here. And I'm not going to worry if I get paint on my edges, because I can come back and touch up with black at the end. I did not varnish the very edge of it, so that I can touch that up and varnish it when I varnish the top. So one coat here, and I might do 2 coats, because this is still showing a lot of the wood through there, and I don't really want to see that. So I'm going to get it dry and apply a second coat on here. So while this is drying, I'm just going to let you know what brushes I used for this project. I used my artist sponge. I'm going to be using a stippling sponge, and both of these sponges are available on my website. I'm going to use a 16 flat, a 12 flat, a 10 flat, and an 8 flat. A 1/2-inch mop brush, 1 and a 4 round, a 10-0 liner, which I seem to have 2 of those out for some reason, and then I'm using a rake brush. And here is where you can use whatever rake brush that you like. I'm going to use this flat one. This is a Simply Simmons. It's a 1/4-inch size. And I got the Simply Simmons brand at Hobby Lobby. Or if you have a Lowell Cornell, this one is a filbert rake. It doesn't matter if it's filbert or flat. Either one will do for what we are going to use it for. So those are the brushes that we're going to be using on this project. And I just wanted to let you know ahead of time so that you could have those ready. And we are going to use glazing medium here in just a minute. I am going to put another coat of my dried clay on here with my sponge, and then we're going to add some layering to get to this background. So we start here. Unbelievable that we start here with an orange and we get to here. So the orange is almost like an undercoating for this project. So I'm going to quickly apply a second coat on here of this dried clay. This dried clay is a new color for 2018. We'll be using using this. I think we'll be using this color somewhere else in the design. I'm trying to remember where else I used it, but okay. We're going to let that dry, and then we're going to have handy our glazing medium for our next few layers. Okay, this is dry. I'm going to lightly sand it because I feel like the grain has raised just a little bit. I'm going to take that down, wipe off the sanding dust. And I used a very ultra fine sanding pad, or you can use a brown paper bag. You will get the same effect. This is super, super soft, so don't use anything too rough or you'll take your paint off. Okay, so let's get on our palette some glazing medium. And we're going to need this with our next layers of paint. You're also going to need some kind of brush or tool to spatter water on here. I like to use this 1/2" filbert rake. It's got long hairs that hang off of the end of it, so it gives me a nice spatter on there. But you can use just a regular brush as well. So I'm going to pick up some glazing medium on my dampened sponge. I went and washed all the paint out of it and left it slightly damp. And I'm going to pick up milk chocolate. And we're going to skim this across our plate. You want to make sure you have that glazing medium on there because it's important for the technique we're going to do on this background. I kind of push my sponge into the where it's got that ring in there because I don't want no paint. I need paint to be there. I don't want us to necessarily see that ring on here. So I'm going to work a little bit quicker here. I have my ceiling fan on and it is very humid here today, so this might take a while to dry. Okay, that's good enough. Let's take our rake brush here and spatter some water on here. The bigger the drops, the better I like it. And okay, so now for what we need to do on our next step here is to take a dry sponge of some kind, and we want to lift the paint where the water went. So you want to try and dab off the water, and you get this really cool effect in the background. So the glazing medium is going to help with this effect. That's why we needed it. And we want to just remove where the water is. Just dab it up with the sponge and it will remove the paint that we applied here. And as long as the water is still wet, you can remove, but once the water dries, you're all done. So, and just take it to the point that you like it. I think this is just a super cool effect on the background. So just remove it until you're happy and you don't see any puddles of water standing anywhere. And then we're going to let this get completely dry, and we are going to apply our next layer of color on here. Okay, this layer is dry, so now we're going to get a little burnt umber out. I've washed my sponge out again. It's damp, but I'm going to load it up with some glazing medium. And a little little bit of burnt umber. And again, we're going to streak this across. Try and keep it going, you know, level here. A little bit more burnt umber out. Okay, before it dries, we got to get some water on this. And your layers can be as dark as you want them to be. Okay. It's very important that you put the water on before the glazing medium dries. And then again, we're going to remove. And that burnt umber that we put on there. So you have to put the water on while the glazing medium is wet and remove the paint before the water dries, before the water and the glazing medium dry. This gives such a fun, super cool effect. And by removing the water and a little bit of the glazing medium at the same time, it allows our layers to get dry a little bit quicker. And you can come in here and add, you know, like graining and stuff like that. I did not on my other one, and I probably won't on this one. I just kind of want it to look like a solid piece of wood here. So we've got a couple more colors to put on here. So we're going to get this dry, and we will be ready for our next layer as soon as this dries. Alright, this layer is dry, so our next layer is soft black. And I'm trying to do a little bit less of each layer so I don't completely cover up our beginning color. So soft black. A little bit crooked here, so let me straighten this out. Alright, let's do some spattering. The more water, the bigger the drops are, the more it will remove and the cooler the effect will be, I think. Trying to make sure I hit all of the places that are wet here. some drops right there, but this does not want to seem, excuse me, does not want to seem to go into that spot. Okay, we'll just call that good. Now we're going to remove. It's just a simple little process here. I'll go to a drier spot now because that was a lot of water that I soaked up there. You always want to try to be using a dry place on your sponge. So if your sponge gets really full of water, then just flip over to another place and continue blotting at this. You can probably do it with a paper towel as well. I just feel like I have a little bit more control using this sponge here. This is just so cool. Just love it. I'm lifting it up so I can see where I have some big blotches of water that I haven't removed yet. Really super cool. Alright, I think I've got all the water off that I'm going to get off. So I'm going to let this layer dry, and then we've got one more layer to put on here. Okay, so we're ready for our final layer. Now the final layer is completely optional to you. If you like the color that you have right here, right now, and the effect that you have, you do not have to do any more. But I wanted mine to look just a little bit, you know, weathered. So, glazing medium, and we're going to use a new color called Plum Suede. And I think this is going to give it a nice little, I'm not going to use very much of this across through here. Make sure my stuff is going horizontally. And just work your way down. As little or as much of this color as you want. And then we shall spatter. Clean water. And just try and hit every place that you put some of that really good. And I think that's probably pretty good. So I'm going to start removing. And this is our final layer on here, so once you're done with this layer, or if your previous layer was the last one that you wanted, then you can be done. And you can go ahead and get your pattern lines all transferred on. You don't need to add the detail lines on the jar yet, but I think most all the other lines will be put on. You do not have to, it's the lettering on the jar that you don't have to transfer on. But I think every other line on there should be transferred, and we're going to get some base coats on those and get ready to start painting. dry spot there. My sponge is really getting a lot of water in it, so I keep turning it to find a dry spot to remove. Okay, that looks pretty good. I really like the effect on there, so I'm going to get it dry and get my pattern lines transferred on. Okay, because this is such a large pattern, I cut 2 holes in it and taped it down with Scotch tape so it would not move, and transferred it with my white graphite paper. Now, I did not transfer in my words up here because I made a stencil for them, but if you don't wish to get the stencil, then you can just transfer the letters and paint them in, and you can change the name up here at the top to your family name. So, some options there. So now we're going to get some base coats on this pattern. So let me go get the base coats on, the undercoats or the base coats on, and I'll come back and tell you what I did, and we'll get started adding some detail on here. Okay, so I'm starting my base coats here, and inside the jar and all of the strawberries are going to be base coated in with, or undercoated in with an equal mix of pumpkin and summer squash. Reds tend to be a little bit transparent, so we need to undercoat to get, you know, our red paints to show up better. So inside the jar, all the strawberries down here will get the same color. And then the basket we're going to base in with cocoa. So the strawberry goes here. And I did not transfer the leaves onto the strawberries because they'll just get in the way. I don't want to have to paint around something that small, so don't put the leaves on here. And it's okay if your paint leads a little bit more towards the orange or a little bit more towards the yellow. I am just brush mixing. You can go ahead and mix a little bit on your palette if that's the way that you prefer to do it. I like to brush mix because I like the variance in colors that I get. And everything will get 2 coats. So I'm going to go off camera and finish getting all of my base coats on. 2 coats on everything. Right now we're just concentrating on the strawberries, the basket, and the jar. And then the lid on the jar was just, I mixed a gray value, a medium gray value with my black and my white. So you can't go wrong there. Okay, let's get started on here. I did 1 strawberry to kind of give you an idea of where we're going. I drew these circles on here. These are where my highlights are going to be. And so I want to kind of keep that a little bit lighter. So I'm going to take some thin paint. I've got cad orange and cad red, and I'm just kind of mixing them together in a little wash of color here. Added water to it, and I'm going to paint in around that highlight area. And rinse my brush off very quickly and pick up the summer squash color and put that in there. And now I'm just going to wipe my brush off and just kind of let that kind of blend out right there. We want to keep the we always want to keep this area light. It'll be easier when we come and add our highlight at the end. And if you want to have a second brush in your hand to do just the highlight with, then you can do that. I'm going to grab a filbert brush. Just any brush will do, so don't think you have to get a special brush for it. So I'm going to go in and do all these. I'm mixing cad red and cad orange, just dipping into each one and mixing a wash of color with these 2. And just painting them in very quickly. Going into my yellow, putting that in there, and just gently kind of blend that out. Just retaining that little highlight in there. So they'll all get this except for this half a one down here. I'll get this wash of color here. Put my yellow in, wipe my brush off, and then just kind of tap blend that around right there. And it doesn't matter if your paint color leans more to the orange side or the red side, it's okay. You know, because that's why I like to brush mix. I like to have that variance in color. I don't like to have everything exactly the same. A little bit of yellow in here. And then just kind of blend that out. Yellow, and just tap blend it. We don't have to blend it all the way out. I just lace them in there, wipe the end of my brush off, and then go blend it. Now I'm not going to worry about a highlight on this one. There's a little bit of highlight on the edge of this one, but I'm not going to worry about adding it in. These ones in the back, they'll stay mostly dark, so we don't have to get too awful concerned with their highlight. More water in my mix here. No thick lines here. These should still be pretty smooth layers that we're putting on here. Oops, that was a lot of paint. Didn't need quite that much. Okay, let's go down and do these down here. We're not going to work on the jar right now, so it will come after we get everything else done. And a little bit of yellow in here. Just kind of tap it in. One more here. Little pitty pat taps. Way too much water there. Just went and wiped off my brush on my paper towel. I got all that excess water and paint out. Okay, that's got our first layer on those strawberries. So now we're going to come back and start adding some definition. Okay, so we're going to start with just Cad Red here. And see how it looks on here. We want to start getting these strawberries to look more like strawberries and not just little blobs on here. So I'm just side loading the Cad Red. And going on the strawberries. And right up to our highlight and kind of blending it in and around it. If you need to draw your lines back in, you can put them back in. But I think we're going to be okay here. Pick up a little bit of water here. I can soften that out. Use your finger if you need to kind of remove where the highlight is, and that highlight's not going to be quite that big, so I'm going to put a little bit of paint back in there. And then go out here. This is the Cad Red that we're using. I have just side loaded my brush. Oops, paint on the wrong side here. That was a lot of paint there. Didn't like that. Don't want any thick paint. And we're just going to continue on doing all of our strawberries with just Cad Red. Now we did that wash with Cad Red and Cad Orange. Now we're just using Cad Red. A little goober in my paint there. Okay, we still got that little bit of highlight going on there. I might come back and draw my lines back in for you so that you can tell kind of where we're going here. Okay, we're still kind of keeping our highlights in there. It's very important. If you end up covering them up with your paint, we can add them back in with, when we add detail highlights at the end, but if you can kind of keep them there, it will make it a little bit easier. more cat red in here. Okay, those are looking pretty good. Wide angle out just a little bit. I know they look kind of orangey, but trust me, we're going to get to this red right here. This bright, bold red. We are going to get there. I think while we have these colors out, let's just go ahead and do this edge on this half a strawberry here. This one down here, we can see the side of the strawberry. Right here. So we can fill that in with this cad orange and cad red mix. Okay. Alright, let's add some fun stuff on here. So we're going to grab some cranberry wine. And some... Let's do soft black. I think I'll mix it with soft black. We're going to make our seeds in here. Okay, we're going to use our detail liner here, and we're just going to mix some cranberry wine and soft black together. That's way too much water, so let's add some more paint in here. We're going to create some seeds to go in our watermelon. So first off, let me find my pencil. So this strawberry is here. This one is here. I think some of them you can kind of see. Let's see, this one's on top. Okay, so we can kind of see where we're going here with our strawberries. Now you want your strawberries to, the seeds to go the direction of the strawberry. We want to go to the stem. So if you need to mark where the stem is, this is where the stem is on these strawberries. You can just put a little X so you know which direction you're going to. And then this one, the stem is down underneath there, so we're going to come in. And then this one is kind of turned so the stem is behind it. So if that will help you, put a little X there where we're going towards the stem, and we're just going to put in some seeds. Make them little, not great big like that first one I put on there. And we're going to go all the way. Might wipe them back a little bit in that highlight area. And you can have them as close as you need to each other. And go all the way to the... So here is the stem on this one. I want to come from this direction right here. And they won't be in a row like little sticks or soldiers. I'm just doing it lightly right there in the highlight area. Okay, they're already starting to look like strawberries. So just go and do this to all of your strawberries. Little marks. Don't make big long seeds. We don't want big long seeds in here. In here I'm barely going to touch it because we won't see a whole lot of that underneath the highlight. Okay, we're really forming the shape on these strawberries now. So I'm going to do a couple more. So the stem is right here. So the tip of this strawberry is going to be down in here. Little tiny little strokes. And this one back here, the stem is turned away towards us, so we can really make these any direction that we want them to go. It's not going to matter so much with these. Now when I load my brush up, I go and wipe the tip of it on my paper towel so I don't have a whole lot of paint in my brush. Touch all them back because they were a little bit darker than what I wanted. Okay, I'm going to do this one. Here is where the stem is going to be, over here on this edge. So we want to bring our seeds from there. Right to that. Okay, I'm going to do one more for you because they're all going to be pretty repetitive. I'm going to do this one back here. So here's the stem, so the tip of this strawberry is down in here. Okay. So I'm going to go finish up all the other ones. You can even add a few seeds on the edge of this strawberry right here, this half a strawberry. Okay, let's take a little dot of summer squash. We're going to be adding some layers of red on here, so we may have to come back and put some of our seeds back in. But this is summer squash, and we just want to dot, a little dot. Get it to come off my brush here. On some of our seeds. We don't have to do them all. Might stay more on the lighter side of the strawberries. Alright, keeping it just teeny tiny little dots. Right on those lines that we added on here. Bringing them out from it a little bit because, you know, a few of these are going to catch some light on there. I'll go down and do these down here. Summer squash. Little dots. few over here on this. And one more. Those are looking pretty good. Let's add some of our brighter reds on here. This is Tuscan Red that we're going to be using. So right now I'm just going to side load this color, and we're going to come in and paint the darker edges. We'll come back in a little bit and add a wash of this onto our strawberries, but for now we just want to concentrate this on the darker side. And the strawberry's going to get it pretty much around the whole thing. See, we've still got our light area in there. We need to retain that. And this one down in here will get mostly all red, because it's kind of back in the back. I'm not seeing a whole lot of it. There we go. My camera wasn't focused there for a second. Okay. This one will be mostly dark. We'll have a little bit of highlight on that outer edge back there. If you get some on your highlight area, just take your finger and kind of tap it back just to retain that as best you can. I love painting fruit. One of my favorite things paint is fruit. Fruit and still life and flowers. A bit more paint here. This is all kind of repetitive for these strawberries. Here in the basket, this is the last one. Anytime you need to go in and erase your graphite lines is fine. You just need to make sure that you know for sure where a strawberry is. So I will probably erase mine after this, if there's any that needs to be erased, like right there. That needs to be erased in here. And I've got one in there. So down here. Tuscan Red. Love this color. We can still see our seeds pretty good, but we've got another couple of layers to go on these strawberries. Spritz your palette with water so that you have clean water handy for when you're floating. You have a paint edge and a water edge to your brush, and you load the water on the water edge and you work it into your brush just like you do paint. And that way you blend the water in with the paint. You don't have just a watery edge. So that's looking pretty good right there. Okay, I'm going to erase my lines. Okay, have some cranberry wine on your palette now, and we are going to mix cranberry wine and Tuscan Red. And get our first shading color. With this, and I probably did 2 cranberry wine and 1 Tuscan Red here. So just whatever you brush mix that you like will be fine. I know a lot of people like ratios, and I'm very happy to give those to you, and I probably will put that in the packet, but I want you to get used to mixing your colors on your brush and seeing how the colors look. You've got your main colors there already, so it's easy if you mix it right there on the palette to see kind of where the color is going compared to what's on your palette, if that makes any sense. This one I want to put a little bit more in here. Okay. This is a layering process of colors. So we are building color upon color. So we're keeping this color more to the, I'm going to go along the edge here because I want the edge of that strawberry to be. So I think it needs a little bit more cranberry wine in the mix. I always touch my brush to my paper towel before I take it to my surface so I can get all the excess moisture and possibly too much paint that I have on my brush off of it. This strawberry is sitting on top of this one down here, so I need that little bit of shadow right there. So we'll start developing that shadow right there. Cranberry wine is a pretty transparent color, so mixing it with the Tuscan Red gives it a little bit more of the opaque. I know they're still not looking super red like that other one, but we are getting there. A little bit more cranberry wine here. Okay, so if you've watched any of my videos, and I don't know if I say this every single time, but when you come to an area that's like a V or a triangle, so let me find a really good example, because that one was a good example and I didn't tell you about it. But right here there is a V. This isn't the best example because I need to stay up on the tip of my brush, but you want to push that paint into that V with the tip of the brush and then bring it up and round it out so you can shape that shadow and form it into the shape of what we are painting. So right here there's a V where those two come together right there. So now I'm going to just kind of round that up and onto the remainder of the strawberry. Okay, this is Tuscan Red and cranberry wine mixed together. Okay, they're looking pretty darn good, I'd say. Let's get these down here with our Tuscan Red and cranberry wine mix. I'm going to always try and keep the water edge going towards the highlight area so that I don't cover up that highlight. And then this side down here, we can just kind of fill that in, and we'll come back in and shade it when we shade. I'm going to go down to a smaller brush probably. We're still just adding values on here. We're not shading, we're just adding values of red to build our color and our layers and our brightness. Keep that water edge toward the highlight. Yum, yum, yum. Okay, I think I'm going to go to a smaller brush now. This is a 12, so I'm going to go down to a size 10. And we're going to deepen our shading now. And this time we're going to do cranberry wine and soft black mixed together. You're still wanting a red, not a black. So we want it, actually this will be more purple. So we're just deepening that, making it a little bit darker. And now we'll come up and create our darkest areas. Okay. This will be shaded here, along this edge, and around this strawberry. And I'll wipe it off of my basket. Yeah, I think we'll probably have to bring that up into the strawberry a little bit more. And here's where you want to take a little bit more care, making sure that you shape your strawberries very nicely. Tuck that shadow down into the deep area. Oops, wrong side of my brush. So wash it out and reload. And I like to brush mix because then I don't have a lot of paint mixed up on my palette that I'm going to end up not needing. Okay, that one's pretty dark back in there. So this one, we're going to need some darkness here first of all, where that one kind of lays on top of that one. And down here on this edge, next to the basket, and I'm going to pull that up in there a little bit. A mop brush. That's a little bit hard line there, so I'm just going to mop that. See, this one still doesn't look like the shading is dark enough, so let me repeat it. Probably had too much water in my brush, since that was usually the first one that I paint. I never get dark enough because of the water that's in my brush when I first start out. Woo! Water in my mop brush, that's not good. Okay, let's go underneath this one. And around this one. Round that out. And then we're going to have some here. And I'm going to mop that because that seems very dark. Okay, this one up on top is going to have some shading as well. Let me see where I placed it. Just mixing up a little bit more on my brush here. So I shaded over here on this edge of it. That out. That's a super hard line I don't like. So I'll wash that out and redo it. There we go, a little bit softer. I'm going to have a little bit of a highlight there, and we can put a little bit of this darker color back here next to our stem. Still a little bit dark there, but okay, right here. gotta go along this one here, round that out. Do this one back here. This one's gonna be mostly dark, because it's more in the shadow. Go around this one. Okay, I'll probably have to deepen that a little bit, but it needs to dry first. Oop, did it again. Paint on the wrong side of my brush. Wash it out. Get some fresh cranberry wine out. Now I mix for my cranberry wine and soft black. I start out an equal mix. And if it's not dark enough, then I come back and I lighten it. Or if it's not dark enough, I come back and I add a little bit of soft black back in there. But, you know, into the mix. That one right there is just way too dark on the end. And I do need to bring this up a little bit into the strawberry. So I'm going to take some of my Cad Red, I think. Some of that on the edge out here. Lighten it up just a little bit. It's just way too dark for my liking. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Okay, let's go down and do the ones down here. This one I need to darken because that's not dark enough. Compared to the other strawberries that are in here. Alright, let's do the ones down below. Do a 1-to-1 mix, and if it's not dark enough or it's too dark, then pick up what color you need to adjust that value. I'm going to keep this mostly on this left side over here. So I'm just going to kind of pat it in, then use my mop brush and soften it out there. Too much paint on my brush there. Tilt it up here so I can see it. Okay, a little pea pat. Now you use your mop brush dry, and then you go over to a damp place and clean it off, in a dry place and dry it off so you can have it clean every time that you use it. Otherwise you're just going to transfer paint that you don't want, because the water will reactivate that paint in that dry mop and you'll be sad. So we'll just shade the bottom there. One. This is the one I could have used the bigger brush on, but I'm make it work with this one. I had to get a little bit more water in my brush so that I could move my paint more. And now I'm going to mop that because that is a ton of paint and water there. And one more here. Oops. The strawberry kind of gets it all the way around. It's just got that one little bright spot right there in the middle of it. Okay, so I think we're retaining our color very well. So I want to go back in my highlight areas and dot that yellow back onto my seeds, because I feel like it really faded back down in there. So I'm going to get my detail liner and my yellow. I'm going to do some glazing here in a minute. And I want to make sure I have all these little details. Let's see. Stems over here. Quite that bright, but I want them a little bit brighter. So I'm just going to go back in and do all of these, especially in the highlight area. Maybe I need some water here. It's not wanting to flow off my brush very well. I don't want it too thin down because then it will fade in there again. Just a little dot. Okay, touch it back with your finger so it'll settle down in there. We can come back and do this with our seeds as many times as we need to. It won't change the look of the strawberries. This one I'll get a couple, just a little dot. This one, I'll just do a couple on it. Reflective light there. Just a couple out there. If you lost your little black seeds, you can go back in and add them in too. It's not going to hurt anything. A couple out here. Those are big dots. Let's try to do little dots because those dots were ginormous. Okay, down here to the bottom ones. And I think on my original piece I glazed over the strawberries. I don't know how many times I glazed over them. We're going to glaze over them with the Tuscan Red, and I glazed over them many times. So some of these seeds out here. Highlight. So that's got us to the point where we're ready to add our red glaze on here. Okay, you want to have some fresh Tuscan Red out. And let me get my bigger flat brush. Now, we want to take some clean water. Our brush is loaded with water. We're going to pull some of that Tuscan red out here and thin it down. Nice. That's a lot of paint in there. I don't want that much paint. I want it to go on sheer. We can come back and add as many layers as we want. So we want more water and less paint. Alright, lay your brush on your paper towel, get out the paint that you mixed up, and then go and load it and touch your paper towel. So we're just going to go in here and wash over all of these. We want to still keep our highlight, so we'll try and stay out of our highlight as best we can. So we're just going to wash this in. I'm going to go up to that edge and then just tap with my finger. Tapping with my finger is going to soften that out a little bit. Just do it on all of them. And I probably will come back and do this a couple of times, I think. I don't know how many times I did it on my original one because I like to glaze, so I may have did it 4 or 5 times on my original one. But you do not have to do it that many times. When you get your strawberries a color that you like, then you can be done with them. Because they're still not quite as bright as red as what I've got there, so I'm probably going to let this glaze dry. And or wash, whatever you want to call it, and I'm going to do it again. Making a mess here. I just tap it with my finger because I have my finger right there handy, and I just feel like that's the quickest way to get the job done. Really got a lot of water in it, so let's let those dry. Okay, I'm coming in with another layer of glaze here, or wash, whatever you like to call it. You can add, if your strawberries aren't getting as red as you would like, you can add a little bit of cranberry wine in there if you want. Or if you've got cherry red handy. Cherry red is an excellent glazing color for red. Way too much water. Glazing is so much fun. You can really bring out a lot of color with glazing. I think on some of my shadow I might have got it just a touch too dark with that soft black, so go at it lightly. You can always come back and repeat it, but taking it away is extremely difficult to do. It's just a layering thing here that we're doing, so. I've got my paint just a little bit too wet, so it's not, I'm not able to blur out the edges like I normally do, so. Okay, I glazed over them again. Still not quite as red as what I did on my original one, but if you have cherry red, you might want to glaze over it with that. So we are going to brighten up our highlight on here, because that last glazing kind of took it down a little bit. So I'm going to dampen the area that I'm going to be highlighting. I'm going to take a little bit of yellow and orange and mix it together. Probably more yellow than orange, and I'm going to tap that in here. Dampen, we're going to have to come back and highlight our seeds again. I can see all my glazing took the color down off of those seeds. I want to come back and add a highlight on the edge out there. So I'm just dampening it and tapping in some paint. I have the yellow, the summer squash, and it's got just a tiny little bit of cad orange in it to make it not be so extremely bright. So just tap some water in and then just lay some paint in there. It's going to really fade down in there because we've got a lot of water here, and so it's not going to be very bright once it dries. Alright, come down here and do these. This one is kind of in the center here. Okay, I'm going to rinse that brush out. And I'm going to side load a little bit of yellow and a little bit of cad orange. So I'm lightening up that orange there. And we're going to go out here on this edge and put a little bit. And a little bit up here. Did just a scooch here. Okay, and then this one I got a little bit here, some here on this edge, and just a touch here. This is the same color that we put down in for our watery highlight here. And we'll do a little bit on the tip of this one. A little bit here. And then down here, we'll do this edge. And along this edge. I really need to brighten that up in the center. Okay, let's add our little highlight back onto our seeds. Completely lost that with our washes, and we definitely need those in there. If you can't see your seeds, then you need to paint your seeds back in. This is the yellow, and you can put a little bit of white in it if you want to. Touch your finger back, you know, touch them back so they're not super bright. I've just barely lightened up that yellow with some white because I don't want these to be full white dots. I'm not using my detail liner now, I'm using my little round brush, but you go to a detail liner, because this round brush can make these dots pretty big. Much bigger than I want them to be. So I think I might go grab my detail liner. Take these down. Let me get my detail liner. Just lighten up the yellow just a little bit. That looks better. Okay, where's the stem coming here? This one over here. We're mostly staying in that little highlight area, but we can bring some out past it just so it's not quite so contained. I mean, some of these out here are still going to get a little bit of reflection, you know, catch a little glimpse of the highlight. Pretty good. And then down here on these, we'll do a little bit. If you can't see your dark seeds, you got to put them back in. And I think I might go in and add a few into my darker side. So I'm gonna take, I think, cranberry wine. And I might mix a little bit of lamp black with it this time. them seeds just a tiny bit darker. You're still going to be mostly cranberry wine. You're just tinting. Try to put them where you have them originally so it doesn't look like you have too many layers of seeds. I can still kind of see where my seeds are at, so I'm going where they are, where I can for sure see them. Come back and add a little bit brighter highlight on here. And then get our stems on. I think that's going to help our strawberries look a little bit more realistic when we get some of those stems on there. Way too dark. And it was way too big. Okay, we're looking pretty good here. I do a lot of layering on fruit because I like to get the bright, bold colors. And you can't get that just by painting them in and letting them be. You've got to really create some values in there of your different colors. Okay, I already did those down there. So let's add our brightest highlight on here, which is going to be white. So I'm going to dampen. I'm going to use my detail liner, I think, this time. So I'm going to dampen it. Touch it back with my finger. I want to blur it out. I don't want it to be super duper powerful highlight there. Okay, this one up here, I need to brighten that highlight on the edge with a little bit of yellow. Just a little bit on this edge. That's that summer squash color. Okay, back to our I'm trying to go around my seeds when I'm laying this highlight in there. I don't want it to be directly on top of a seed if I can help it. And this one's going to get just a little bit because it's a little bit farther back, so I don't want it to be as bright. Dampen. Lay some in there. Probably should zoom in a little bit, maybe you can see it better. Dampen. This one's not going to get a whole lot. So we're going to dampen. Oh, that's a lot of water. Maybe not quite that much of a damp, because it will fade your highlight back to where you can't even see it. Keep keep dropping my pencil on the floor. That's the second time. Touch it back with my finger. I'm going around the seeds as best I can there anyway. A little messy. Okay. I think that looks pretty good. Let's just zoom out so you can see them a little bit better. And again, you can add more red on there. You can do another wash of red if you like. I think I am going to wash a little bit red on here. In one place I feel like it's just a little bit too bright. Take that down. Okay, I'm going to go draw my stems on here so we can get those painted in. We're going to work on this half a strawberry in just a minute. Okay, let's paint our stems in. Don't they look beautiful? Those strawberries just look so delicious. We are going to paint them in with aloe. And we'll come back and define their leaf shapes a little bit after we get them all painted in. So we're also going to paint in the stem here. Our leaves will be painted in this color. So just do all of this stuff, and probably will require a second coat for a lot of it. This is a curly Q. I'm going to do it with a, I think with my detail liner. I'm not sure I can get it thin enough with this. No, I'm not even going to try. So all of these stems, even the stem on this one, gets painted in with that color. All the leaves. So I'm going to go off camera and do that because that's very repetitive stuff, and you don't need to watch me paint in every leaf because it's just basic filling in. So I'm going to go get mine done and come back, and we're going to work on this little half a strawberry then. Okay, with my liner brush I'm thinning down some of this green so I can make these little curly Q things. Okay, that's pretty good right there. Now these leaves, they're very small, but I still want to try and float a little bit of shading on them. So I'm going to try and put some in more in the front and some more in the back. I don't know how well it's going to work. I mean, it worked fine on the other one over there, but these did not seem to want to paint in very well. Okay, So kind of got them separated a little bit there. I'm going to use a 6 flat. And we're going to use Hauser Dark Green. So dampen your brush, and you're going to have the tiniest amount of paint on your brush that you can imagine, just a little bit. Work it into the corner. We don't want this to get too carried away here, so I'm going to put some here. And just dab it on in a couple of places. This literally is just dabbing on some color. And we'll do our leaves up here as well. We'll do at the base of them. And a little bit up the left side. Just try to separate your leaves here a little bit. That's all we're trying to do, is create a little bit of separation so it just doesn't look like a blob of leaves here. I am up on the very tip toe of this brush. All your leaves. Now this leaf down here is a turned leaf, so that's not how it goes. Let me erase that. A little carried away with my line there. Okay, it's got a little bit like that. So we're going to put a little bit of this green down here. Give it that turned look. And some down the side, some at the base, and a little bit down here. So that gives that leaf the illusion that it's turned. And I'm just going to dab a little bit of this onto the... I'm not going to paint it on, I'm just dabbing a little bit. And we'll come back with our highlight color and do the same thing. Okay, do these down here. Dab some on the stem. And then we're going to get our highlight color out, which is going to be olive green. But I think before we do that, we're going to add some of this that looks pretty good. Now, the color that we base coated in, I want to side load this small brush here. And I'm going to put a little bit of this on the strawberry itself. I might mix a little bit of that Hauser dark green in with it. And just a little bit on the strawberry right next to the stem. Because it will have a little bit of green coming onto the strawberry from the stem. So I've only got paint on that one corner of my brush. Soften it out, so if you lay it in a little heavy, then just take the water edge of your brush and smooth that out and blend it. See, like that's a little bit heavy, so I'm gonna take the water edge and just soften it out a little bit. One more here. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. We'll do some on this strawberry when we finish it. And now for the highlight is the olive green. Using that same 6 flat. And we're just going to touch a little bit of this to the tips. And just touch a little bit to the tips of your leaves. I'm up on the tip. I'm not really floating. I'm just kind of laying it on there. And we forgot to shade that stem and that stem, so I'll have to come back and do that. On your leaves. I'm going to highlight here and on this edge right here. Just tap it on the tips. And you get that illusion that there's a high and a low to these little leaves. And then we'll tap a little bit on the stem. This wiggly little stem, if you can get it on there. And let me come back and do the Hauser dark green on these stems. We want to do the tip and next to the strawberry. I'm surprised I haven't called these tomatoes. And I missed a stem, so let me paint that stem in down here. This one has a stem. I have it going this direction, but you can have it going whatever direction you want. So, the Hauser dark green at the base and at the tip. It's not quite dry, so it's going to blend in there. And then a little bit of the It's not going to show up yet because it's, I can't even tell that's a stem, so I'm going to erase that. I think I'm going to have it go the other direction just because I've got it very close to my basket there. Goodness, way too much water in this paint. Okay, the dark green down here at the base and at the tip, and then the olive green. Ooh, okay, that's a lot. Wipe that off. That is way too much paint. Okay, I'm just going to leave that stem like that. I prefer it to go the other direction, but I could not get that done with the basket being so close. Okay, I'm going to draw this in here. We're going to have a little bit of wiggly stuff going on up here. There's a thing that comes down the center. And then this goes out here, and this goes out here, and then we have these lines that come off of it. So that's kind of what the center of a strawberry sort of looks like. So we're going to paint it in. Okay. We've already got our orange on it. You can use cat orange or pumpkin, and I think this is a mix of the cat orange and pumpkin, so we're okay there. So we're going to load Snow White and that aloe. Let me get some fresh Snow White out. And I'm using my 6 flat, so I put both colors on my brush, and I'm going to work them into my brush to kind of slightly blend them. We're going to keep the green up here next to the leaf and just kind of wiggle that white in there. Okay. And we're going to take some, I'm going to get my round brush. I want to dampen this a little bit. I'm going to put some cad red. I need some fresh cad red out. So first thing I want to do is put a little bit of white coming down the center here. Just tap it in. I'll wash my brush, then I'm going to pick up the cad red. And I'm going to put that in here next to the white. Bring it down to a point down here. I'm just tapping it in. I'm side loaded. I'm not and I'm going to bring a little bit of it up here into that white and green, and then tap a little bit down into that white. Okay. I'm going to wash my brush, then I'm going to load white, so we're going to be back and forth between white and red here. And I want my white to come out here on the outside of that red that we just put in the center. So I'm just kind of tapping and wiggling and just come all the way down here. Hope I'm keeping you on camera for this. Okay, it's all irregular. Don't make it, you know, super neat and stuff. I need to bring this red a little bit up in here, and don't want the white to go all the way down there. Tuscan Red out. We're going to glaze over this here in a minute, but I need to mix some of that in with my Cad Red. Okay, then we're going to go out here on the outer edge. I have Tuscan Red and Cad Red both in my brush. And we'll go on the other side. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I want to use just the Tuscan Red now. And brighten up this side. And this side. And a little bit in the middle. A little bit brighter. I'm going to make some little lines coming off of this with some white. So use your detail liner and just pull some lines. Okay. Make sure that's dry. I'm going to get a little wash of our cherry red, or Tuscan Red. And, or I might use Cad Red, because Cad Red's not quite so bright. I think Cad Red would be better. And we're just going to wash over this. But we want to make sure that we see the white parts of the strawberry. So while I have this on my brush, I might mix a little bit of Tuscan Red in with it. Let's go up here and put it on some of our leaves, our bigger leaves. And we'll add some veins in here. Red paint clear out here. I don't know how I did that. Talent, sheer talent. Okay. And then our center veins are the Hauser Dark Green. So thin it down a little bit. Not so much that you can't use your brush. Add the veins in. I think that's going to finish up our strawberries. So we'll be ready to move on to the basket or the jar. I think we'll do the basket next, since the jar is more in front of the basket. We'll get the basket done. Let me wide angle out. Oh, don't those strawberries look delicious? Love them. They look awesome. Okay, let's get ready for the basket. We do want to add a little bit of seeds, or the look of seeds peeking off the edge there. And I'm just going to do that with some of our yellow. I'm just going to add some dots. Like some seeds are peeking around the edge there. Let's put a couple on this edge. Okay, I think that makes the half a strawberry look so much better. So just a couple of dots there. You could mix white in with it if you want, but I think just the yellow is fine. And we shaded this. We did all this when we did this. So it's, if you're doing this by itself, it's done exactly the same way with the same colors. Okay, our strawberries look delicious, so let's move on to our basket here. Now, as you can see, I did not paint in the little sections that the reed goes around. It's these sections right here. We're going to paint them in a little bit, but if you did, it's not a big deal. We can paint over it. So I want to bring in the dried clay into this a little bit. It really shows up a lot in the back of, in this one in the background. So I want to bring it into the basket. If you can't see a whole lot of your dried clay, you don't have to add this one. But on this one, I didn't add the dried clay first because I can't really see a whole lot of it in my background on this one. So we're using our rake brush and we're filling it with water, and we're going to our paint here and we're pulling it out and thinning the paint down a little bit and loading our brush. And I like to really push the bristles out and get it loaded. Touch my paper towel, the tip of it to the paper towel, and then we're just going to go in here, and I got way too much on my brush, so I wiped it off. Now I'm going to reload. Okay, and still too much. I'm not getting the separation that I need to get those bristles to. There we go. So test it on your palette. You want to have that rakey look effect. And if you don't have it, then you don't have your brush loaded properly. So we're going to go on each section here, both sides. I just got paint all over the edge. This is dried clay. I don't know how well this color shows up even on camera. I just want to get a little bit of this in here. I'm going to flip it around so we can do the other side. That one should have been this side. And this one should have been this side. Just raking it across there. Right next to all those, we're going to rake some of this across the top, and we can put a little bit down here as well. So that's our dried clay first. Okay, our next color we're going to do is milk chocolate, and this one we'll really definitely be able to see. I'm going to get the excess water out of my brush right away. And come back in here and load it. Whoa! Fling my brush. And test it. Okay, we're going to do the exact same thing. Go all on one side. More water in my paint. You don't have to get carried away with this, so a little bit will do ya. Okay, turn around and do the other sides. Put a little bit of this along the top, and a little bit down here. Okay, now our next color will be burnt umber. So a little bit of water in there, thin that down. And we'll go again. You can do a little bit less of each color as you go across. So hopefully when you're done you can see all of the colors that we put on here. Turn it around. Okay, I think that got all of them, and then we'll put a little bit up through here. Maybe just a touch more water. I'm on the chisel edge of it now, just laying some in there, streaking it across. Okay, that was burnt umber. We want to paint our reeds, our narrow reeds here, and with burnt umber. I'm using a 1 round brush here. Got one here right next to this jar. And if you need to go in and repeat them, that's perfectly fine. Quick little second coat on them. Maybe get this all the way up here. Be probably a good idea. Okay, so we got those in. Okay, so we're going to do some shading now. Put my tin flat. And we'll get some soft black out. Get some water on my palette so I can have it ready. And we're going to load our brush. We're going to side load soft black. I'm going to work it into my brush a little bit so it's a little bit more sheer. And we're going to shade all these places that we use that comb or that rake brush on. Right next to the skinny little reed that we painted in. It's just a soft little float. This is going to help give it the illusion that it's turned back when we add our highlight on here. That's one side, so we got to go do the other side. Flip it around. Work water and paint in my brush at the same time. Because generally when I run out of one, I usually run out of the other. Okay, I think I'm going to take some burnt umber and mix it in with that soft black in my brush. And I'm going to go right underneath this edge right here. See if that's going to make it dark enough. If not, I'm going to have to come back with just soft black. And yeah, I think I'm going to have to do just soft black there. Load my brush with the soft black, and we're going to come right underneath that top edge there. And we'll go right here. Each section of reed, we'll get this. I don't want it to be a harsh line, so blend that paint into your brush a little bit. So it will make a little bit softer line. More water. Paint isn't moving, you don't have enough water. We'll go down here to where the bottom of the basket is. Okay, hopefully I painted that in straight. We're still with soft black here, so we're going to go next to the jar all the way down, so we kind of lost that one reed there. You want to make sure that float you put on the bottom is dry first. Mine was not quite dry, so I just removed it. We're going to go along this outer edge. I'm going to go around this leaf here. If your leaf isn't laying over your basket, then you don't have to worry about that. Actually, that's my highlight edge, so I am gonna darken it there, and then come back and bring my highlight in a little bit. Okay, we also want to take this soft black, and I believe I put it at the top and bottom of these reeds. If it doesn't show up, we might have to come in with some lamp black. We're going to highlight down the center of these narrow reeds here, so that ought to bring that out a little bit. Okay, let's see, where else did I go? I put a little bit of this soft black. I streaked a little bit of it through here. And I definitely put some along the bottom down here. Of the basket. And that looks pretty good for our shading on there. So now we're going to get ready and do some highlights. Okay, let me zoom in just a little bit here. For the highlight in the middle of these things, I'm going to go with dried clay. I think that's what I did here. That's a little bright. Let's mix some milk chocolate in with it. So just streak a little bit in there. Okay, that's all we need to do for the highlight there. Okay, so for our highlight in the center, we're going to use a flat brush. And we're going to mix dried clay and summer squash. Just dip your brush one time into each one and blend it in your brush. And let's see how this color looks on here. You're going to do a back-to-back float. Lay your brush flat, soft pressure, flip the brush over, paint next to paint, lay your brush flat, soft pressure, and you get a nice back-to-back float there. Now if you have difficulty doing a back-to-back float, you can dampen the area in here that you're going to be doing a back-to-back float with. And just don't put as much water in your brush because it will make your float just disappear. And if you get a little choppier than what you like, then you can use a mop brush and mop it and soften it down in there. Usually I do that. But this is going on nice and smoothly. So this will be our first highlight on here on these reeds. This is going to make the reed look like it's more more coming at us, and I don't like that one, so I'm going to mop that. Remove some of that paint off there. This one looks like it might have a little bit more yellow in it than it does, more summer squash than it does dried clay. Alright. I'm going to pick up water when I pick up paint and blend all of that in my brush together at the same time. I had a second camera that I was going to use just for my palette, but something happened to it and it wouldn't work when I turned it on. I've had it for a while, so I don't know if it just decided not to work anymore, if something is wrong internally. I'd had it repaired one time already, so I'd say it was an internal issue with the camera and I can't fix it, so it's not under warranty anymore. I can't fix it, so I'll have to save up and get another camera. Alright, taking the same color along the top here, I'm going to streak a little bit of it in here. And we'll streak just a little bit of it down here. And that's our first highlight there. Our second highlight is going to be just summer squash. So let's add that in there. We're going to do a back-to-back float again. We're not going to go all the way to the top or all the way to the bottom, and we're not going to let it spread out as far. We're going to keep this a little more concentrated right in the center. Still want it to be to soften down in there, so if it's not, then you need to get a little bit more water in your brush. This one is fading away. A little bit down here, not much down there, and then on the top create a little bit brighter highlight through here. Okay, Let's wide angle out because I'm going to add one more bright highlight on here, and then actually before I do that I'm going to glaze over this basket with a wash of burnt umber. Now burnt umber can darken up your basket pretty quick when it dries, so make sure that you make just a very sheer, see, that's a lot of water, hardly any paint in there at all. And I'm going to glaze over the entire basket. Let this dry and add a final bright highlight on a few of the reeds, I think. Okay, so a bright white highlight. We're just going to do a couple of these, just kind of toss it on there. It's still a back-to-back float, but I'm just doing a few of them. I'm going to do more through here. And brighten that up a little bit. Maybe a little bit on that one. I think that's good enough there. I want to put some washes of color in here, and then I need to go and deepen right there where those strawberries set into that basket just a little bit. So one of the colors that I put in my original one was this color back here, this plum suede. I really like this color. So we're just going to just kiss some touches of this throughout the reed area. Just find some places. This is going to make the basket look a little bit more worn down and weathered. You are the master of your basket, so you put these colors where where it appeals to you. And if you aren't sure, then you can just follow my picture and kind of put it where I'm putting it. Okay, I think that's enough of that color. Except I want to put a little bit at the base. Really make it look a little more worn. Okay. Let's add a little glazing of some cad red. I might want Tuscan red. Tuscan red will be a little bit more. Let's see how this one looks. Some reflection, maybe bouncing, colors bouncing off of here. Again, you get to be the judge of where your red goes in your piece, so don't feel like you have to follow my my design. Okay, I think that's enough red. It's just some random places in there. So I'm going to get my soft black and my cranberry wine out. And I just want to slightly deepen cranberry wine down here. Not a lot, but just a scooch. So cranberry wine, soft black, work that into my brush a little bit, and then we're just going to go along down here, maybe just a tiny bit more soft black, right where these strawberries sit. Into the basket needs to be just a touch darker. I'll go around some of these leaves while I have this color. And give like a little shadow coming off of our leaves onto our strawberries. I'm using mostly soft black here. Create some darker shadows. Here and over here. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, I think that's going to finish up our basket. The basket was pretty quick. It's a pretty easy little basket to paint, so not a lot of stuff that you have to stress out about. And with that, all right, let's work on our jar of jam here. My thing, I'm going to be spinning. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take some glazing medium, and the colors we will need on our palette is Cad Orange, Cad Red, and Pumpkin first. So you want to put them in order from either lightest to darkest or darkest to lightest on your palette. So it would be Pumpkin, Cad Orange, then Cad Red. We're going to put all three of these colors on there at the same time. Okay, so we want to first, another thing that you want to have handy is I just took a bag like from Walmart or the dollar store and I cut it up into little squares. So you'll need those. Let me grab one so I can have it handy. We're going to brush glazing medium over the entire jar. Get all the way up to your edges, but don't go past your edges. Nice coat of this on here. And lift it up, make sure I didn't miss any place. Alright, looks like I got it all. So I'm just going to wipe my brush off. I don't need to wash it. And I'm going to pick up the pumpkin. Now pumpkin is what we base coated this in, but I want to lay the pumpkin in on this side. I'm going to wipe my brush off, pick up some Cad Orange, and it's going to be more towards the center. And wipe my brush off and pick up the Cad Red. Oops. I don't want to go out past. Just fill that in, lay it on top of that glazing medium. I need to work quick enough that the glazing medium doesn't dry. Mine's already starting to get tacky, so I'm going to quickly get my paper on here. I'm going to lay it on here, cover the whole thing, kind of squish it up, wrinkle it up. I'm going to give some texture inside this jar. And it's going to remove some of the paint and then leave some texture behind. And then just, I'm going to do this a little bit more up here. Okay, there we've got some nice texture started in that jar. It's really hard to see it on the pumpkin side because that's the color that we base coated it in. So we've got to get that dry before we can do anything else to it. Got more layers to put on there. So while it is drying, let's work on our lettering. Now, find my stencil. Okay, finally got my stencil out. So I made a stencil specifically for this design, which you can order, but you don't have to do that. So I'm going to put Lamb Family Farms across the top of it like this. But I've also put the letters on here so that we can just paint them in. So we are going to mix a light gray color with some black and some white and paint these letters in. Just use a round brush. And I'm just going to brush mix. It's nothing that you have to mix a bunch for. So I definitely want it to be a light gray, not a dark gray. So more white, just a tiny little bit of black will do. Mostly white. I really want it to be a light gray. So all that white that I put there, I just used it all. I'm going to put a little bit more on my palette because we'll need it for a little bit of a highlight. So we're just going to paint our letters in. So what I do is I transfer my letters on very carefully, and I get my paint not quite inky consistency, but where it will flow off of my brush very, very easily. I roll my brush in the paint. I get a nice tip on it. And then I stay up on that tip and I outline the letter. You won't be able to do this if you don't have your paint a good consistency for writing. And then you just load your brush up and fill in the letters. That's not quite as dark a gray as what I've got here, but I like the little bit darker gray than what I did there. So just fill in. This is just outlining and filling in the letters. I'll just do this one letter to show you how we're going to do it, and then I'll show you with the stencil how we're going to do it. So we just fill it in. If you need 2 coats, use 2 coats, but I think if you fill it in nicely, 1 coat is really all you're going to need, and we want the letters to look old anyway, so it's okay if a little bit of the background peeks through. So then to age them up a little bit, I just took my brush and loaded some black in it and then removed a lot of it, and then I just went in here and like scrubbed in some black, aging on wherever you want it on your letters. Just lightly scrub it in there on each letter, and then I load some white, and I'm going to do a little bit of that with some white as well. Give it a little bit of a highlight. And the white may fade down in there, so you might have to repeat the white, so it's still just a little scrubbing motion, and putting the colors in like that so that they look old. Now to get the shadow around the outside, we take our round brush. I'm using a 1 round here, and we're going to load it with some black paint. And our brush should, you should have a round brush that will let you form it to a flat brush when you load it. So this is now a flat brush. So we're going to come a little bit away from the letters. So I don't want to go right next to the letter. You see, I'm going to leave a gap between them. And we're just going to outline on this side. And we'll do a little bit here. Remember to stay away from the letters. Even inside here, we don't want to be right up next to it. So that's all the left sides is what we're doing. And I'll do this last letter here. So we're out away from it. And we're just following that shape. If it makes it easier for you, you can draw your line in and then just paint over that line. And then right here. So that's how we're going to kind of create. And I got the black a little bit high there. You wouldn't want it that high. You don't want it any higher than what the and it won't remove off of this cardboard, but you don't want it any higher than what the letter itself is. And I didn't follow the angle there very good, so make sure you follow the angle. So that's how we're going to do if you paint the letters in. And you can change the name, put your name on there. This one might be a little bit trickier to put Family Farms on there, but I'm going to do the Lamb name on here real quick. I want to make sure that I am centered. Since I can't really draw a straight line across here. If you're doing a flat surface, you'll want to draw a straight line. And what I did on this one is I drew my line where I wanted the bottom of the letters to be, and then I drew a line however tall the letters were and drew a line across the top, so that when I transferred my letters, I made sure I didn't get above or below the 2 lines that I had drawn in. So that will just make it a little bit easier if you're on a flat surface. I drew a line here, and then I drew a line up here. Oops. Up here at the top, and transferred my letters on to that area, or put my stencil down in that area so that I would have it centered within those lines. And if you're painting it, definitely draw those lines in there, because that will just make it so much easier. So I'm going to grab a makeup sponge. And I use my makeup sponges until there is nothing left. I just keep clipping off what I've used until, you know, there's literally nothing left of the sponge. So I lay it on its side, let the paint dry in it, and clip it off. So I'm going to tap that gray. I have enough left here. I'm going to put the lamb in and just do it on camera, and I'll go off camera and do the other. Tapping straight up and down. Now, makeup sponges are not absorbent, so don't fill your sponge with a lot of paint, because it will just ooze under. So you want to pull a little bit out from your paint and work it into your sponge, not directly in the paint, but out here. And then it's a straight up and down tapping motion. Don't swirl it or twirl it or slide it or anything. It's just straight up and down. And you do as many coats as you want of your base color. One's good enough for me. So then I'm going to pick up a little bit of black and tap it into my sponge, And I just want to create some of that worn look just within my letters. I'll probably go back over the black because I want it to be a little bit darker than what it is here. So I'll just give it another little tap where I've got it. Okay, then I'm going to take the opposite side of the sponge that I had the gray on, and just pick up a little bit of white and just throw some of this in there. We don't have to put it everywhere. And I might repeat that just in case it fades. Just very lightly repeat it. And then I'm going to lift my stencil up, and there we have the name. And then I'm going to outline just like I did on the other with the black. Now with the stencil, it leaves those little gaps. They're called bridges, and you can just come in and fill those in. Just the B and the A have it. You can fill those in. And make it a solid letter. Oops, that's way too far away from that B, so I'll remove that and repaint it. Okay, so there's our little shadow on there. And I might go ahead and fill those letters in just across. It's just a little stroking of some paint here just to finish forming the letter. I'm just doing it with the gray. So you can have some solid letters here. Okay, so that's how we're going to do it if we're going to stencil it on. So I'm going to go finish stenciling this on, and then we'll come down here and work on the jar some more. Okay, got my lettering done. Because this is a curved area, in the end I had to paint this in by hand. So if you're working on a plate like me, you'll probably have to paint these letters in by hand, but these you can stencil in if you decide to get the stencil. Okay, back to our jar. Okay, so we want to put some glazing medium on it again. So just cover it with the glazing medium. I'm going to give it a good generous amount because it takes me a little while to get all the paint colors on here. And I want to make sure I've got time to get everything done before it dries. Okay, wipe my brush off. This time you're going to want to have some Tuscan red on your palette. And we're going to start with the Cad orange this time. And we're going to put that in over here. I'll try and get all the way to the edge here. Then we're going to go to some Cad red. Put that in here. And then our Tuscan red. Over here. Okay, I'm going to wipe my brush out now. And I'm going to try and blend those colors kind of where they meat a little bit. That one's blended pretty good, so I think we don't have to worry about that one. Alright, piece of plastic. Lay it on there. Crinkle, crinkle, crinkle. The more crinkly you can get it, the better texture you'll have in here. And we will, nope, not enough texture. That's better. And just throw that piece away. So we've got a nice, some really nice texture going on in the jar right now. So we've got to get that layer dry. Okay, while we let that dry, I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit. We're going to work on the lid. And we're going to take, we've got black and white on our palette already, so we're going to take the black and side load for a float here. And we're going to paint in this edge, float along this edge. Yeah, I've got a lot of water in my brush here, so I'm going to walk that over just a little bit and take my mop brush and mop that, wipe my mop brush off because I picked up a lot of water there, and just gently mop that out just a little bit. And we'll come back and repeat it. Now I want to wipe a lot of the paint out of my brush and pick up a little bit of water and work it into my brush so that my black's not as dark as what I just put there. And we're going to flip around and go to the other side. We want this lid to look rounded, but this is our highlight side, our lighter side. So we want to keep this a little bit lighter. So we will mop that. Okay, and I want to put a little bit of this. I'll get a little bit more paint, and we want to make sure that those two are dry before you do this. And we're going to go along the bottom here. And I'm going to mop that. And I did a soft little bit of it along the back here as well. Again, make sure your two end floats are dry before you do this. If they're not dry, you'll just remove. And then I put a little bit of a shadow right along here. And just kind of smooth it out. Okay. This is not quite dry, but I think it's dry enough for what I want to do next, and that's put some seeds in here. So we want to get our cranberry wine and our soft black out. And make your seed color like we did over here. So you're just going to darken up that red. Make some seed color, get some water in the paint. We need it to flow off our brush nicely. And this is, we're just darkening up that cranberry wine a little bit. So you should have a value that's a little bit darker than what the cranberry wine starts out to be. And we'll go in here and paint some little bitty seeds in here. We've got another layer that we're going to put on here, so this is going to push the seeds into the jar when we put our next layer, and we've got some glazes to go on here, but we'll add another layer of seeds on here. In my original one I did not do that, and I kind of lost my seeds in it, so I think I will do a little bit of seed layering in this one to see if I can get the seeds to stay more prominent. Okay, that's probably enough seeds in there. And we'll take our yellow, which is summer squash. And we will just dot just a few of these because, like I said, they're going to get pushed back in here. And this is the highlight side, so, you know, we can make it a little bit more for these, because maybe they might peek through a little bit more. And we can just catch a couple over here. Okay, so that's our seeds. So we'll let that get dry along with our glazing medium here on the jar. And then we'll come back and add our next layer. While that's drying, I want to get some paint underneath this jar lid. So I just picked up some Cad Red, some Tuscan Red. Doesn't matter, just you can kind of blend it out on your brush and just kind of paint that in. And we'll go ahead and try and get all the way to our edges over here. We'll be coming in and floating in some stuff here soon, but we don't want to see any of those edges. Okay, that feels pretty dry. Let's get another layer of glazing medium on here. And this will be our last textured layer that we'll put on here. Okay, so for this layer, we are going to do Cad Red, Tuscan Red, and some cranberry wine. Let me get my Cad Red to come out of my jar. So we're going to lay the Cad Red in over here. Be just a tad bit heavy. I'm going to go to our Tuscan Red and bring that over, and then we're going to do cranberry on this outer edge out here. Just kind of let those blend together, and we're going to take our paper and wrinkle, wrinkle, wrinkle. I really want to wrinkle this edge up a little bit. Just get it really, really wrinkled in there, because we want to remove as much of that paint as we can. Okay, that looks pretty good. Pretty darn good there. I think we will let it dry. What did I do with my paintbrush? In my water. That's a big no-no. I think on this edge out here, I'm going to float some Cad Orange. Or just kind of tap some in. I don't want to float because my glazing medium is wet, but I need to get a little bit of paint in there. I might mix a little bit of pumpkin with it. Keep it light. Okay, so we're going to let this get dry because we can't do anything else to it until it dries. Let's go up here and add our highlight on our lid. And I want to put a little bit of a highlight right across here. I'm just going to do a little back-to-back float thing here. And mop it up. Kind of remove a little bit, smooth it out. Got some hard lines going there. Don't like them. Just wipe most of that away, so I'm gonna let it do its thing for a second. And a little bit more of the, a little bit more of the black along the bottom here. Need to smooth that out just a little bit. Go back over here and add a little bit more over here. Keep your hand out of your glazing medium so you don't remove it. Okay. Alright, let's let everything get dry. Alright, let's brighten our highlight here on our lid with our white. I'm doing a back-to-back float, which is what we did over here in the basket. A little bit more paint. Mop brush because I want to soften that quite a bit. A little bit of a hard line here. Okay, let's put some more seeds in our jar, and now we're going to start putting some glazes on here. So just a few on, that will be more on top. So that was our cranberry wine and soft black mixed together. And we're just going to put a few in here. I think on the, over here in the lighter side, I might add just a tiny bit of Cad Red to that mix, because I don't want them to be super bright, and our yellow that we washed on there is completely gone off of the other ones. And our highlight that we put on these might wash away, but we can come back and add it back in. So our little highlight of white, or summer squash. And I gotta get these little dots dry. Just a couple over here. We're going to add some glazes on top of this before we do our shading. So some of these will probably, you know, disappear down in there, which is good. We need them to not stand on top of the surface. So we've got to get these dry. Okay, these feel dry. So let's start with a wash of our Cad Red, which is going to be mostly just water. I'm going to tint to this water with some Cad Red paint. And we're going to brush over the entire jar with this color. I want it to look like jam when we're done. My other one, it kind of looks like jam, but it almost to me looks like salsa. I don't want the salsa look. I want definitely to have some jam here. Okay, that was with Cad Red. Might add a little bit more color to the water. And give it a little bit more. Okay, we gotta get this dry. Alright, let's add a wash of Tuscan Red on here. Remember, you're tinting your water. So how much paint you add to the water will determine how deep your red is. I think it's starting to look a lot more like strawberry jam now. Okay, looking good. Alright, let's let that get dry. Okay, that's dry, so let's do some cranberry wine on this side. And Tuscan Red on the rest of it. And I think this will be all of our washes that we put on here until we get our lettering done, to see if we want it, because I came back and I did a couple more coats of washes on here. Oops, sorry, probably had you off camera for that. Just washing it on. I was just following the edge there pretty closely. So I think that's going to get our colors good for our jam. So let's get this dry and we will start shading on this. Okay, our jar is dry, so now we are going to shade this side of the jar and underneath the rim. And I'm using a size 16 brush. You use whatever brush is comfortable for you. And if you have a hard time floating large areas, then you can pre-dampen. This is just water. Pre-dampen the area with some water, but that means you want to have a little bit less water in your brush when you go to paint. So we need cranberry wine and soft black. We really want to make a nice, rich, deep burgundy color. And we'll start over here. A little bit too much on my brush. And I'm going to try and keep my brush flat so it will help that to soften out as that paint goes into the water. We're going to go down here, load a little bit more, get the water out of my brush. And I'm just going to brush through. My water's mostly dried, but I think I can brush this over. I did some of this along the bottom. Down here, okay, let me find my mop brush. I'm going to mop that just a little bit, not too much. I like the texture in there because this is some jam, so it's going to have some texture. I want to put a little bit of this along the top underneath the jar. So I'm going to start back here because I don't want it to be quite this dark over there. And add a little bit of cat red to my mix here. And that will just lighten it up just a little bit, but will still be dark enough to go underneath that lid. Okay, that's all I'm going to do right there because this float over here is not dry, and I'm just going to be removing it if I go through it. So I'm going to let that get completely dry. It's cool to the touch. It is not dry, so don't attempt to paint over it because you'll just lift and remove. Okay, on the other side we want to have some summer squash and some cad orange out. And so this side we want to highlight, so I'm going to dampen this side. And we're going to go with the cad orange and add just a tiny little bit of the yellow to it. I don't want it to be quite the color of the pumpkin, but I want it to be a little bit lighter on this outer edge. And I'm going to bring that in over here a little bit. Start creating our highlight on the jar a little bit. We've got to add our lettering, so our lettering will take some of that down, but we can get a start on it. And a little bit down here. We want to follow the form of the jar, make the jar look rounded there. Okay? Alright, before we do any more deepening of the shading, I'm going to go ahead and get my letters on. Now on this one, I just did pieces of the letters, transferred them on. I think on this one all I'm going to do is the word ball. But I will have in the packet that option to put the mason on there. But I think with this one I just want it to say ball. Excuse me. Okay, I've got my letters on. I want to deepen that shading on this side. Which is cranberry wine soft black. Okay, let me get some mixture on my brush. Alright, down this side. Now I've put my letters on, but you want to try, and I've transferred them kind of dark for you, but you want to try and transfer them as light as you can. Okay, that really needs to come over farther than what it is. Okay, I'm going to be going through my letters, which is going to set that graphite right into my design. So before I go over them, I'm going to erase them back just a little bit for me to see. Because once the water and paint go over it, there is no getting this graphite off. And you can do it with chalk or Choco paper, and then it won't be set in there. I'm not sure I can see my lines now, or tell exactly where they are. Okay, where was I? Adding this color in here. I need to bring this shadow over a little bit more. It's too tight against the edge of the jar. very gently blend it into that. I don't want to make that edge darker than what it already is, but make it just a little darker. We're going to be adding a reflective highlight in here, so I could have left a section of that a little bit brighter. Ugh, my brush is full of water. That is not good. Just going to remove my paint. Okay, I'm just going to leave that alone right there. And I think that's a pretty good shadow right now. So before I go any further and add more red onto this, because it needs to be redder, I want to go around my letters. So let me see my pencil here, because find my letters. Can't really tell what that B looks like now. It goes here, and it goes down here. Up there. I should come off of that, I think. So that should be thinner. Okay, eraser, eraser, eraser. And transfer my lines on very well. It's flat there. It's curved there. Okay. I think the rest of it I can kind of figure out. This is actually fatter down there. And then this actually curves to a point here. So let me erase that. Make that point a little bit better. There we go. I know I just erased all of this back, but this particular pencil will erase with water or paint, so I don't have to worry about it being set in there. Alright, so for our letters, now on all of the left sides of the letter, we are going to go in with, I'm going to use my 6 flat, and I'm going to use my cranberry wine and a teeny tiny, we really want this to be more red values, so I think I'm not going to use soft black because I don't want it to be that black. So let's go with some cranberry wine, and let's see what Tuscan red does to it. Okay, so this is cranberry wine, 2 cranberry wine, 1 Tuscan red. And we're going to do, I don't know that it'll show up right here, so I might have to go darker here. I'm going to do the left sides of each letter. Tiny little bit of soft black in there. So this little piece right here will get some. It's just like if you're doing a drop shadow around something, how you do the left sides of it. So we're going to pretend that the area with inside the lines is the letter. Well, it is the letter, but I mean that it's already painted in. And we're going to go on the left sides of everything. So on this particular letter, we can go a little bit darker because it's in the shadows. So we'll go inside here. This is the cranberry wine, a little bit of soft black. You can throw some Tuscan red in there too if you want. it's going to be pretty much straight paint with just a little bit of water in there. So we're already giving that letter the look of it being raised, which is good. We want to go a little bit on this side of the letter. And this side. My fan is drying out my brush faster than I can paint with it. Okay, now on the A, we'll go a little bit more cranberry wine here. So we want to do this little piece that sticks out here, and we want to come down the letter. And we don't want to go underneath it, so we just want to keep it on this side. So now I'm going to do cranberry wine still, and do the inside of the A. I think I might add a little Tuscan red to it. We want our shading color to get lighter as we go across, because we're getting into lighter colors of the jar. So we don't want it to be dark over there where it's lighter. Okay, we're going to put some here. I'm going to get a little bit more Tuscan red on my brush. And let's see, where else are we going to go? We're going to go along this side. We'll just do one letter at a time, because if we have to adjust the color for the next letter, then we're not going back and forth with our paint. Okay, right there. I'm going to go underneath here, or right there where it has its little opening. Okay, Tuscan red. Might get a little bit of cad red in there this time. And we're going to go inside here, down here. Might need a little bit more of the Tuscan red in there, because I can't see this too awful well. Okay, I'm going to add a tiny bit of cranberry wine to it, and we're going to go along the top of this. A little bit more cranberry wine because I can't see it very well. And I'm up on the toe of this brush, okay, so that, you know, I'm not leaving a wide flat line in there. Okay, I think that's all of the shadows we want to do. So now we want to do the same thing with a lighter color and create a highlight on the opposite side. So I'm going to start with some Tuscan red and some cad red. And then this will go under here. Maybe a little bit more cad red. I'm going inside here. Up underneath here. Might need a little bit of cad orange in there. Can't really see that, so I'm going to grab a little bit of Tuscan red. We're going to be still glazing over this jar, so some of this we might end up not seeing. We'll grab a little bit of cad orange and cad red together. I'm just brush mixing, picking up random paint here. A little bit of Tuscan red. Needs to be lighter. Lighter still, so I'm in cad orange and yellow. Mostly cad orange. Ooh, way too light. Okay, we'll do cad orange and cad red. Down along here. Tuscan red in there because that's a little bit too bright of a highlight through there. I've got to remove a little bit of that. It's a little wide. I don't want it that wide. Alright, I'm mixing some more cad orange and cad red. More of the cad orange. On this side. See, I went inside there already. Along that side. Along this side. I think I shaded that side. So, some cranberry wine. A little bit of Tuscan red in it. That's a little dark for that light side of the jar. Okay, I'm gonna have to go in and erase my graphite lines so I can tell where this stuff is, and see if I got my, hopefully I got my shading and highlighting okay, so that when I erase this I can still see the word ball on here. Because that's what you want to see. You want to see that word. You want it to look like part of the glass. And that looks pretty good. So it's just using the values, trying not to get them too bright or too dark for the area that you are painting in. Okay, so now we're going to glaze over the entire piece again with that Tuscan red. So you want to make sure your letters are, you're happy with them. I'm going to go over every bit of it, and then we're going to come in and add our brighter highlights. Oops, don't get outside the lines. Okay, I'm going to wipe my brush out so I'm just very lightly going over the letters. So I'm not laying down a lot of water in there. And I think that looks really, really good. So now all we need to do is let this dry, and we're going to come back and add some highlights on here. Okay, so I want to create some highlights. That's still a little cool, but I want to create a reflective light over here on the jar. Okay, then we're going to create a highlight down through here, one coming around the jar here and across the jar here, and then we'll do our brightest highlights maybe down the edge a little bit. Okay, so for our reflective highlight, we're going to take Cad Red and Cad Orange on our brush, side load for a float. And if this is a little bit bright, then you can add a little bit of the Tuscan Red in there. And we're going to go along this edge. Now, because I've already put my shading on here, I will have to do this a couple of times. And I just kind of want to pull it out into the jar a little bit. That's really going to fade down in there because I have a lot of water. But we're going to repeat it several times, so we will get it where we can see it. Okay, for our highlights here, we're going to use, now you can dry brush these highlights if you are a person who prefers to dry brush. So we're going to use Cad Orange. And let's get a little tiny bit of yellow in there. Put this up through here. I think I'll just do it back to back through here. And it goes down here. Goes across here. And I'm going to take my round brush and streak a little bit of that in our letters. And that was the Cad Orange. I've got it thinned down with some water. That's not going to show up, so I'm going to put a little bit more yellow in it. And it's just a wash of color. Getting a little light bouncing off of our letters here. A little bit more Cad Orange in the mix because we're getting into darker territory here. So let's go into some Tuscan Red. Let me take that down a little bit. Cad Orange, Cad Red. We really want this highlight to stay mostly over here. We don't need it to go all the way across our letters, but all right, our highlight again, which is the orange, Cad Orange, and a little bit of yellow. Add a little bit of Tuscan Red in there. I'm going to go down this again, across here again, and across here, and then we'll do the Cad Orange and the Cad Red, and come back over here, and pull this reflective highlight out here. I'm going to mop that. Got a lot of paint there. Wipe it off and touch that for a mop. And then let's do some just yellow, and then we'll do some just white. And I think we might be done with the jar. We'll zoom out and take a look at it to see if it's, you know, got the lights that we want on it. So this is the summer squash color. And I just want to put it along the edge here for our highlight. A little bit more brighter reflective highlight. We got to let that dry, and then we're going to come back with some white. I'm going to go ahead and wide angle out here so you can see it. That's looking pretty good. Get a little bit of white on my brush. I'm going to load my brush with white, and then I'm going to wipe most of it off on my paper towel because I don't want this to get out of control. And I'm going to mix a little bit of yellow with it just to lighten that yellow and go right there. Drag it out with my finger. A little bit too much paint there. Okay, those are a little bit brighter than what I want them to be. So, I'm going to take them down a little bit. Just dampen them. Bring them down a touch. I think on my other one I even came back and this one might be a little bit lighter over here. Just kind of wiggle some of that in there. And I'm going to go with some Tuscan Red again, the wash of Tuscan Red. And oops, I'm going to try and go around my highlights. If you go through it, not a big deal. See, like I go through that one, you can still retain those highlights in there. Okay. I want this to be red. I want this to look like strawberry jam, not. I may have gotten it a little bit dark over here on this side. Okay, I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to come back and see if I need to brighten any highlights. We've got to add some black around the border here. I just did it with a sponge, so we're going to do that next. Give it a little bit of antiquing, and then I pulled a little bit with the sponge, some black, into some random places on here. I actually think this jar jam looks much better than on my original design, so. Okay, so before we put our black around the outside border, we want to put some black around the bottom of everything here. So, get some black out. Thought I had some, but I guess I don't. So black, and we're just going to float this color around everything, so it's going to be super dark up in there. Around your strawberry. I'm surprised I haven't called these tomatoes. Whenever I paint something red, I think of tomatoes. You really want it dark where these two strawberries kind of meet here. And then we're going to go around our jar here. So underneath our jar. There a little bit. Over here we can have it a little bit of a coming out from the jar a little bit. go under the basket. It'll be up on the side of the brush here because it's a little bit tighter of an area to put a float in here. I want to create some shadowy stuff back in here. So just use the corner of your brush and create some shadow stuff kind of back in there. And then come back and repeat anything that you feel needs to be a little bit darker. I especially want these areas in between the strawberries to be dark. Okay, I think that looks pretty good for our shadow there. Add a little bit more right back in here. Just use the very tip of the brush to kind of lay some of that in there. Okay, let's wide angle out so we can do the outside of our piece. I'm going to lock this down for a second. Wide angle. Alright, I've got my damp sponge. Okay, I'm going to pick up a little bit of black on the edge of that. I'm going to work it in on my palette into the sponge. I'm just going to spread it on the sponge, but it's going to help it mix with that water that's in the sponge, which is just damp. It's not got a lot of water in it, so don't go crazy with the water. And then we're just going to come along the outer edge and like shade the outer edge of this very softly with the sponge. The water in the sponge, the little bit of moisture that's in there is going to help soften that way down in there. Okay, so we've gone all the way around. So now I'm just going to go back to that spot where I kind of worked it into the sponge, load it a little bit more, and then we're just going to pull some of this black into it. Make sure we kind of stay straight across from each other, like we're making a line. So if you need to straighten it up a little bit, then be sure and do that. And you can be the judge of when you're done, when you think you've got enough in there. You don't want too much. The black can take over very quickly, so just be gentle with that. Okay, I think that it looks pretty good for our piece. And it is a little bit darker. The background's a little bit darker than the first one that I made. I did the exact same steps, but this one turned out lighter than this one. So, probably because I put more burnt umber on this one than I did on this one. I went very sparingly with the burnt umber in the background on this one, and not so much on this one. So, you can see the difference between the two. I'm going to wide angle out a little bit more so we can see them both. Make some room here. So, round plaque and round plate. So I really like the color of the jam on this one. I think it is very bright and bright, but our strawberries are brighter here. So this one goes well with this one. So whichever way it turns out, I probably use more oranges over here, cat reds and cat oranges, than I did in this one. So whichever way that it turns out, you're not going to go wrong. It's going to be great. And I see our strawberries here, our half strawberries are shaped a little bit different, but that's okay. But I think they're both beautiful. I love them both. So I can't wait to hang them up. We got to varnish them. A couple of coats of good varnish. If you're going to hang outdoors, like I'm thinking of maybe hanging this one outdoors, you want to have good outdoor varnish for this. Okay. All right. Well, I think that is our finished project today, and I hope that you enjoyed it and that you paint it in many, many ways on many, many surfaces. And I will see you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.